Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we're going to be working out of, I believe this is the second Outlander kitchen cookbook, and we're going to be making Scotch broth at Cranesmuir. Now I've gotten most of the stuff ready, which we don't need all of it right this minute, and we'll talk about the ingredients after I get this thing going. This is not really just a broth, it's more of a soup. And she asks for lamb, flank, breast, or shank. I have some Australian lamb foreshanks here. We don't eat a lot of lamb. And if you don't like lamb, you can use beef because before the rising, they definitely would have had beef. More than the sheep that became more common afterwards. But so feel free to use beef if you don't like lamb. My husband does not like lamb. I like it just fine. So we don't cook with it a lot. But so I assume there's going to be a lot of bone and with this and not a whole ton of meat, but that should be fine for just a pot of soup. I didn't grow up eating a lot of lamb. My father, as I've said before, is Scottish, and he grew up eating a lot of mutton. He did not like it, so we never had it as I was growing up. So I'll be interested to see how I like this soup with lamb in it and whether my husband will enjoy it or not. So I have to keep turning the pages here because there's a nice, beautiful picture, but that separates the instructions from the ingredients. So I have my soup pot here with the water that I've already measured, and the only thing I need to put in this right now, and that water is cold, you don't want to start this with hot water. So I'm just going to put this in my pot with the water and go wash my hands and throw this away. Okay, so now that this is in the water, I don't think I need to add anything else to this. I'm going to put this on the stove and bring it to a boil over high heat and boil it for 1 minute before we skim the scum from the surface. So I'm going to do that sort of over here, but I'll bring it back over when we need to skim the scum because there's some other things we can do while we wait for this to come to a boil. Like my chicken and leek soup, which is the carle-sanders, which is another Scottish recipe slash food. This soup has leeks in it, and it's quite a lot of leeks. So I've gone ahead and sliced these diagonally, thinly, white and light green parts only, and put them in a bowl of water. And I'm going to go get my salad spinner to dry them off a bit. You do this with leeks because there's a lot of dirt and grit in them, and you want to sort of pull from the top, and all of the dirt and grit will be on the bottom. And this doesn't have to be like super dry, so you can just put this in a dish towel and that's fine. And she does say that it's not like but it's pretty easy to do this with the salad spinner and show you all of the sort of yucky dirt that's on the bottom there that you want to, which is why you did this. Just picking out as much as I can, and that'll be fine. And then I'm going to dump this and we can wash it. So I'm just going to spin this a bit. And that'll be fine. They're dry enough. You see a lot of water came out, and I can just leave this over here. The other things that I have already prepared, I have some pearled barley, which again, I also use in my carle-sanders soup. And I've got some split peas. I could only find green ones, which I'm sure is fine. It doesn't call for a specific color, but green is what I could find at my grocery store the other day. I know they also make yellow split peas because there are a lot of Indian dishes that call for those, but that's not what we have. I have a carrot that I shredded. This is a lot for one carrot. I had a very large carrot. And then some turnips. So this was kind of languishing in the back of my refrigerator, so it's a little bit spongy in the middle because it kind of dries out a little bit, but it'll be fine in the soup and it's perfectly good. I still have to go outside. It's a nice dreary spring day here and it's rainy and a little bit cool, but I'm gonna have to go outside to harvest a little bit of kale, but that doesn't go until the end, so I don't need it right now, and some parsley to garnish. So I have all of that, but it's outside. So we'll get that probably while this is simmering. I'll pick my time and go out when it's not super wet, hopefully. It's starting to come to a boil. I'm gonna go keep an eye on it and measure it and let it boil for 1 minute, and then I'll bring it back over here and we'll skim the surface. This boiled for 1 minute and there is quite a bit of scum, so I'm just gonna put that in this paper towel. I got this thing to help me do this, and it seems to work pretty well. This tool. I don't do this quite very often, but I'm definitely going to follow the recipe for this one. I will say lamb has a particular smell that is different than beef as it's cooking. All right, I'm going to add the split peas and the barley. I'm going to add half of these leeks. There we go. Good enough. And half of these carrots. That's good. And I'm going to return it to the stove and at medium-low and simmer it until the peas and the barley are tender. That'll take about an hour. We will see you in about an hour, at which point hopefully I'll have my kale already prepared. This has been cooking for about an hour. It took a while for it to actually come up to a simmer, so I didn't start the timer until it did come up to a simmer, but our barley and our split peas are pretty much done. They're tender, and you can see that the broth has sort of cooked down because we've been cooking this without a lid on it as requested. So I've got some hot water we're going to add here so it doesn't take the temperature down too much. We're going to add a few other things. So first I'm going to add these turnips that we talked about already. So those are going in. The rest of our carrots are going to go in. And the rest of the leeks. It's just going to cook down a lot so it won't be too much. Here we go. So I'm going to turn it up just a little bit to get this back to a simmer. And then we're going to cook it for about 30 minutes. Once it comes to a simmer, I'm going to start the timer about 30 minutes or until the turnips are soft. And then we'll show you what we do then. My soup has been cooking with the turnips and the rest of everything in it for about 30 minutes, and they're soft. I tested them. And so now all I have to do is take out the meat, and I'm going to let it cool for a while because I don't want to touch it when it's this hot. And then we're going to pull it off of the bone and get rid of all the gristle and all the stuff you don't want to eat. And she says to shred it, cut it, whatever works for you, whatever you like. But for this, I'm going to let this sit, like I said, for a while before I even touch it, because I don't want to touch it right now. But I'm going to turn this down to the lowest heat my stove will do and put a lid on it so that it will not boil off or overcook anything. Good thing about that barley is you can't really overcook it in soup. But yeah, so we will come back and show you what we do after this, because if you remember, we have not even added any salt to this, so it doesn't taste very good right now. So we'll figure that out in just a minute. So I let my meat cool for a bit and pulled it out, and this is what we ended up with. We're putting all of it back in along with the little bits of vegetables that stuck to the meat. And now we add some kale. So I did finally get out to get my kale, and I thinly shredded it. I just used my knife. So we're gonna add this in, and this doesn't get cooked for very long. The kale doesn't, so, because she says basically, sorry for the dingy dingy. She says basically to season it and then serve it. So we're gonna let ours sit for a little bit after this, but I'm gonna add my salt now. Okay. So I'm gonna start with the amount of salt that she says, and then we're gonna taste it, because I have a feeling that it'll take more. Get it all mixed in well. So let me taste it. Definitely get way more flavor now that it has salt in it. I'm gonna add another teaspoon, I think. All right, so I'm gonna add another teaspoon, give it a stir. Okay, I think that's good. So I added an extra teaspoon on top of what the recipe says, but you season it to your taste. So you definitely want to taste it and season, because your meat and your vegetables and all that will be just a little bit different, and your taste. So I'm just going to turn this back down to really low heat and let it sit until we're ready to eat, at which point we will dish it up and garnish it with some chopped fresh parsley, which I've already done, and we'll show you what that looks like and tell you what we think in just a minute. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make Scotch broth at Cranesmuir from Teresa Carle-Sanders' Outlander Kitchen 2. Her second Outlander kitchen cookbook. And we did not like this. This is one that I can say absolutely, we did not like this. And I put that squarely on the lamb being particularly gamey. I don't know if it is because of the cut that I chose, which was a lamb foreshank, because lamb is not highly available here. I mean, you can find it if you look for it, but it's not something where you have a bunch of cuts at the standard grocery store. But I thought that for a soup, that would be a good cut. And, you know, she says to use a flank, breast, or shank. So I thought a foreshank would be good, and it would have been great, except for the fact that apparently we really do not like the gamey flavor of the lamb. I was doing a little bit of research to see if, because I've had lamb before and I didn't hate it. I like it, but I don't remember that flavor. So some factors that can contribute: the fat carries more of the gamey flavor, supposedly. So the foreshank does have quite a bit of fat and connective tissue, so that might be it, and it is a gamier cut. It could have been, I believe it was Australian lamb, which they generally, from what I've read, not an expert, don't finish it on grain. So it's all grass, which also makes it gamier. So if we had liked it at all, I would certainly consider making a smaller batch of this with a different cut just to see if it lessened the flavor, if it was not quite as gamey. However, since nobody really liked it, we ate it. It was fine. It was just really not our favorite thing to eat. I would not make this with lamb again. However, I think it would be absolutely delicious with beef. You know, use any sort of stewing beef cut that you like. What she said is perfectly authentic. It will be a different flavor, and I'm sure it would be one that we would enjoy. This reminds me a lot of my chicken and leek, the kakaliki soup that I make, because it has the barley in it, and all the other flavors are things that we enjoy. So I'm pretty sure it was the lamb. So I would, if I made this again, I would not use lamb. So I would not suggest that if you don't know that you really like that gamey lamb flavor, don't use lamb. Anyway, everything else, it was a pretty simple recipe. It is a lot like what I do for my chicken soup. That is, you know, not from this book, but there is a book. There is a recipe from, I think the first book for that soup, but it's a lot different than this. So my recipe is kind of like this, kind of like that, but it's chicken. This would be great with chicken too. Other than that, it's like a basic soup. So I figured it had to be the lamb. Anyway, pretty simple. Throw it all in a pot. You don't even have to brown or saute your veggies first, and they're cut up relatively small. And it takes a little while because, you know, you're cooking that meat that is a stewing sort of cut of meat. You're cooking that for a little while to make it soft and get the flavor into the broth. But it doesn't take forever. It takes a while. But the smaller your cut of meat is, the less time that would take. All in all, it was an easy recipe, and I would make it again, but without the lamb. So if you've enjoyed watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. If you enjoy lamb, let me know in the comment down below if that is something that you enjoy. I would love to hear it. And come back and watch me make something else next week.